thoughts and to really understand that we are not the thoughts, life could become more peaceful, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But how Loloso came about, a couple years ago, the reason why I got into spiritual teachings, actually it started out me being a relationship coach because I was totally devastated from a relationship, which I'm sure I'm not the only person in here that's ever had that experience. So I was totally devastated by that relationship, and I was so close to committing suicide. I remember I was seeing a doctor, I was seeing a psychiatrist, and everything. My whole life was just totally depressed at that point. I couldn't really function, and I couldn't really live with myself anymore. That's how I felt, because she was like almost the world to me, and then it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. So that's why I started to act like that. And something happened to me because I'm a really big believer in affirmations. And I started saying affirmations to myself a couple years ago. And then something happened to me, whereas, I was just talking about thinking and thoughts, my mind just became completely quiet. So instead of having 35 thoughts to 50 thoughts a minute, I was having maybe between 5 and 10 thoughts a minute. So my mind wasn't as active. And because my mind wasn't as active, my life became more peaceful. Every interaction became more peaceful because I no longer had the mental commentary telling me something that was necessarily, most of the time, not true. So we all have heard before when it comes to love, right? We hear that we have to love ourselves before we love someone else. I think in actuality what it really is, from my experience or my realization, is more so how much love we have that flows through us. And what I've realized is we always have unconditional love flowing through us all the time. It keeps going all the time, but we stop it from flowing with our mind. So if a thought can make me happy or unhappy, I should take a sip of water. If a thought could make me happy or unhappy, then that means that I'm controlling my unhappiness in my mind. So that's what I learned to do. So we control how much love flows through us, and love always flows through us, but in our mind we stop the flow of love. So when it comes to love and relationships, the less judgment we have in our mind, then the better it is for our relationships. Does that make sense? Because there's more love flowing through me. So it's not a question of loving myself first. It's more a question of how much love do I have inside of me, right? Based on non-judgment, right? So from that point on, so it became easier at that point for me to now love others. And the way I was in my past relationship, I had a little bit of love flowing through me, but I still had a lot of bad talk. And one of the bad talks I had was that I'm not good enough for my spouse, or that I could never be with the woman that I truly wanted to be with, right? I'm not sure if I'm the only one that's ever had these thoughts, but these are the thoughts that I had, right? And it used to drive me crazy. So from that point on, to how I was before was, I had enough that I could put other people first, but at the same time, I never really could worry about myself. So I hear sometimes people talk about, loving, we have to love ourselves first before we can love others. But sometimes we have to be careful because it could be easy to be selfish, right? So I was walking a thin line. Before I used to love others a lot, and it was always, I wanted other people to win because I had a decent amount of love flowing through me, but I would forget about myself. So after that breakup, I had the choice to go from maybe loving other people or only loving myself, right? But instead of having to choose between those two, I chose to love other people equally as I would love myself. Does that make sense? So instead of me putting down one person first and forgetting about myself, I never forgot about myself. So I'm putting you first, and I'm also putting myself first. So that means if something didn't make sense for me, also, I didn't do it, right? Because how many times are we in situations, in relationships or wherever, where we feel as if we're doing something and it's not really beneficial to us? Has anyone ever been in that situation? Anyone else? Am I the only one? Right? So, and to be careful of being selfish, if I worry about myself first before I worry about others, it's easy to be selfish because it's just me. I can't really tell what other people are feeling. So I decided to really focus on, and this is where Loloso comes in, love others. That's why love others is first. And actually, when we first started Loloso, it was actually love ourselves first. But some reason, every time we would say it, all the students would always say love others first. And I realized, that's how it should be. So you love others, then we love ourselves. So I'm making sure that person, things happen in their best interests. And at the same time, I'm making sure things happen in my best interest. And if it can't happen for both of us, then I'm not going to include myself in it. Does that make sense? So from that point on, relationships became easy because now I don't have to worry about myself being mistreated or the other person being mistreated. And from that point on, all my relationships has just been really simple. I'm not saying that we always agreed, but they've been really simple. And before that, my relationships were kind of challenging. I would always kind of find people that maybe, have anyone ever heard someone say before that you got to stand up for yourself in relationships? I no longer believe in that, because to me if I have to continuously stand up for myself, that means then that person, for some reason, they don't know when enough is enough, and that's maybe something with that person's mentality. So in my friendships, for now the last 4 years, I'm not in situations where people take advantage of me. That literally does not exist for me anymore because of learning how to treat other people equally. So I mean, to be honest, how many people would like to be in situations where no one takes advantage of you, it's completely peaceful, and everything kind of works out for you? I mean, so for me, that's how I've been living my life the last couple of years from this experience. And it started with my mind, just being able to quiet my thoughts. So when I meet a person, I'm actually able to meet the person and connect with them on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, whereas there's no judgment. So if I'm meeting Corey, I'm meeting Corey. I'm not going to meet my story about Corey in my mind. Does that make sense? And relationships become so much peaceful. Life, every aspect of life becomes wonderful because there's no more judgment about things. So now just walking, I remember a couple weeks ago, me and my girlfriend, we went to the hospital together. Not just to go, but she had to go to the hospital. And I had a great time in the hospital because life has become such a wonderful thing that no matter where I am, I could have a great time. So